My wife announced today that she's sleeping with her idol. She insisted it's just a one-night thing and not cheating, and that she still loves me. She demanded that I just deal with it. I understood her, and my next move will be a good lesson for her. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Grab a drink, get comfortable, because this is a story I've been putting off telling for a long time. It's the story of how my picture-perfect marriage imploded and how I had to crawl through the wreckage to build something new. It all started on a Tuesday, a completely unremarkable, aggressively average Tuesday. I came home from work, tired, ready for dinner, ready for the comfortable quiet of my life. But the quiet I walked into was different. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that has a sound. And standing in the middle of our living room, suitcase by the door, was my wife, Amelia. She looked at me, not with sadness, not with anger, but with a chilling kind of resolve. And then she said it. The 7 words that became the title of this chapter of my life.
Today I'll be with the man of my dreams. Just deal with it.
And then she left. Just like that. Walked out the door, leaving me standing there in a crater of my own making, apparently. I thought that was the worst part. I thought that sentence was the kill shot. I was wrong. Oh, I was so wrong. The journey that sentence sent me on, it was a descent into hell, but it was also the path to finding out who I really was. And the way it ends, the way it all came full circle, you're not going to see it coming. For the first few minutes, I didn't move. I think my brain literally blue-screened. I just stood in the entryway of the home we'd bought together, staring at the door she'd just closed behind her. The click of the latch echoed in the silence. It was a sound of absolute finality. I replayed the words in my head. Today, I'll be with the man of my dreams. Just deal with it. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't an apology. It was a declaration, a command. Just deal with it. Like I was an annoying pop-up ad she was finally closing. I walked numbly through the house. Her scent was still in the air, that floral perfume she always wore. Her favorite mug was by the sink. A half-finished book was on her nightstand. It was like a museum of a life that had ended just moments before, and I was the lone, confused visitor. My heart was a frantic drummer in my chest, but the rest of my body felt like it was filled with wet concrete. Who was he? The man of her dreams. How long had this been going on? Were all those late nights at the office a lie? Was every girls' night out a cover? My mind was a maelstrom of questions, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 8. We were that couple. The ones our friends pointed to. Solid. Dependable. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. Or at least, I thought we did. I sank onto the sofa, the one we spent weeks picking out, and that's when the shock began to recede, replaced by a white-hot rage. It was a fury so intense it felt like it was going to burn my skin off from the inside. I wanted to punch a wall, to scream until my throat was raw. How dare she? How dare she dismantle our life with such casual cruelty? Just deal with it? My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was my buddy, Mark. I ignored it. I couldn't talk to anyone. What would I even say? Yeah, my wife just left me for her dream man, and my only instructions were to deal with it. It sounded like a bad joke. Instead, I did what any man in the 21st century does when his world collapses. I went to her social media. It was a masochistic impulse, a desperate need to find a clue, a reason, anything that might make sense of the senseless. Her Instagram was the usual curated perfection. Smiling selfies, photos of our last vacation, snaps of her brunch with her friends. Her friends. And that's when a piece of the puzzle slid into place. Her new friends. Over the last year, Amelia had fallen in with this new crew. I called them the Brunch Brigade. Women in their late 20s and early 30s, all single, all preaching a very specific gospel of female empowerment that sounded a lot like toxic selfishness to me. Their mantra was, "You owe it to yourself." Want that expensive bag? You owe it to yourself. Want to ghost that guy who was perfectly nice but didn't give you the spark? You owe it to yourself. Want to blow up your stable? Loving marriage for a fleeting thrill? Apparently, you owe that to yourself too. I remember one of them, Jessica, holding court at a barbecue we'd hosted a few months back. I was at the grill, and they were by the patio table, drinking rosé like it was water. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help but overhear.
Honestly, Amelia, you're in your prime. You can't let yourself be tied down to something that's just comfortable. Life is about passion, about excitement. You have to chase your bliss, girl.
At the time, I'd rolled my eyes. It sounded like a bunch of inspirational quotes from a TJ Maxx coffee mug strung together. But now, those words were sinister. They were the seeds of the poison that had just killed my marriage. Jessica and the others had convinced Amelia that our life, our steady, loving real life, was a cage, and that I was the warden. The rage was still there, but now it was joined by a profound, soul-crushing sadness. This wasn't just a betrayal by my wife. It felt like a cultural brainwashing. She hadn't just left me for another man, she'd left our life for a hashtag. Live your best life. I spent the rest of the night in a daze. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, the silence of the house pressing in on me, the ghost of her words echoing in the empty rooms. I thought about everything we'd built, the struggles we'd overcome, the future we'd planned, all of it, gone, reduced to a 7-word-long death sentence. Around 3 a.m. my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her. My heart leaped, a stupid, hopeful little flutter. Maybe she'd made a mistake. Maybe she was sorry. I fumbled for the phone, my hands shaking. The message was short.
I left my blue suitcase. It has my work stuff. I'll have a friend pick it up tomorrow. Don't be there.
No apology, no explanation, just logistics, the cold, practical cleanup after the demolition, and that's when the rage and sadness finally gave way to something else. A cold, hard clarity. This was real. This was happening, and I had a choice. I could stay here in this house full of ghosts and drown in my own misery. Or I could get the hell out. And then I remembered. The email. The one that had been sitting in my inbox for 2 weeks. It was a job offer. A senior position at a marketing firm. A significant pay raise, more responsibility. A chance to really prove myself. It was a fantastic opportunity. The only catch? It was 2,500 miles away, in Austin, Texas. I'd mentioned it to Amelia, of course. We'd discussed it for all of 5 minutes before she'd shut it down.
Austin? Seriously? Alex, our life is here. My friends are here. My job is here. I'm not moving to Texas just so you can have a slightly better title on your business card. It's not happening.
Her dismissal had stung, but I'd let it go. For us. For the life we were building here. But there was no us anymore. There was no here. There was only me, sitting in the dark, with a shattered life and a single unopened door. I found my laptop, the screen illuminating my haggard face in the dark room. I pulled up the email. The offer was still there. We were incredibly impressed. We understand this is a big decision. We hope to hear from you by the end of the month. I looked around the room, at the life that was no longer mine. Her throw blanket was still draped over the armchair. A picture of us, smiling on a beach in Mexico, sat on the mantelpiece. They were props from a play that had finished its run. Just deal with it, she'd said. A humorless smile touched my lips. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. I will. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I wrote a short, professional acceptance email. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second guess. I hit send and felt the first glimmer of something other than pain in what felt like an eternity. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't even hope. It was the feeling of taking the steering wheel in a car that had been skidding out of control. The next part of this story, that's where things get truly insane. Because moving to Austin wasn't just about a new job, it was about becoming a new man. And if you're not subscribed, now is probably the time to do it. You are not going to want to miss what happens next. The 2 weeks leading up to the move were a blur of boxes, paperwork, and forced, awkward conversations. I sold the house. The market was hot and I just wanted out. I didn't care about getting the best possible price. I cared about speed. Every moment spent in that house was like picking at a scab. Amelia and I communicated only through lawyers. It was brutally efficient and emotionally devastating. I packed up my half of a decade of life, deciding what was mine, what was ours, and what was now just painful garbage. I remember my best friend Mark coming over to help me pack the garage. He's a man of few words, but he's solid as a rock. He handed me a beer, and we just worked in silence for a while, the only sounds being the screech of packing tape and the thud of boxes. Finally, he paused, leaning against my old workbench.
You doing okay, man? For real?
I stopped, a dusty box of old college textbooks in my hands. I shrugged, the gesture feeling heavy and inadequate. I don't know what I'm doing, Mark. I'm just moving. It feels like I'm running away.
Nah, you're not running away. You're running to something. There's a difference. She ended the chapter, man. You get to write the next one. Don't let her hold the pen.
His words stuck with me. Don't let her hold the pen. Arriving in Austin felt like landing on another planet. The air was thick with heat and the smell of barbecue. The energy was electric, a stark contrast to the sleepy suburban life I'd left behind. My new apartment was sterile and empty, the walls a blank canvas. For the first few weeks, I was consumed by loneliness, the kind that's so deep and quiet it feels like a physical presence in the room. I'd go to work, come home, eat takeout standing over the kitchen counter, and stare at the wall. The silence was my only companion. The ghost of Amelia's words was still there, a constant low hum in the back of my mind. Just deal with it. Work was my only salvation. I threw myself into it with a ferocity I hadn't felt in years. I was the first one in, the last one out. I took on the hardest projects, the ones no one else wanted. I channeled all that rage, all that pain, all that confusion into my work. And it paid off. My bosses were impressed. I was hitting targets, leading successful campaigns, and making a name for myself. For 8 to 10 hours a day, I wasn't the guy whose wife left him in the most brutal way imaginable. I was Alex, the guy who gets things done. But the nights were still long. One Friday, after a particularly grueling week, I forced myself to go to a bar instead of my empty apartment. I just wanted to be around people, to feel the thrum of life. I sat at the bar nursing a beer, feeling invisible, and I started listening, really listening, to the conversations around me, and I heard it everywhere. Guys talking about their relationships, heartbreak, confusion, betrayal. One guy, not much older than me, was talking to his friend. He looked gutted.
She just said she wasn't happy, no other reason. After 6 years, I'm not happy. Like I'm a TV show she got bored of.
His friend nodded grimly.
It's the new thing, bro. The self-care breakup. It's not about us anymore. It's all about their journey.
It was like a lightning bolt. I wasn't alone. I mean, I knew I wasn't literally the only person to ever get divorced, but my experience felt so specific, so cruelly modern. Hearing those guys, it clicked. This wasn't just my story. This was the story of a lot of men. Men who were raised to be providers, to be stable, to be the rock. And we were being left behind for guys who were a vibe or an exciting new chapter. We were being told our stability was boring, our love was a cage, and our efforts were expectations. A crazy idea started to form in my mind. What if I could use my professional skills, marketing, branding, communication, to help these guys? What if I could take my own agonizing journey and turn it into a roadmap for others? It started as a blog, just a simple anonymous website. I called it the Phoenix Protocol. Cheesy, I know, but it felt right. It was about rising from the ashes. I wrote my first post that weekend. I didn't hold back. I wrote about the shock, the rage, the feeling of being utterly worthless. I wrote about the brunch brigade and their toxic gospel. I wrote about staring at an empty house and feeling like my life was over. I hit publish, my heart pounding. I expected maybe 3 people to read it. My mom, Mark, and probably a bot from Russia. I woke up the next morning to over 100 comments. Dude, are you me? This is exactly what happened. Thank you for putting this into words. I thought I was going crazy. The part about her friends, spot on. It's like they're in a cult. The response was overwhelming. It was a raw, untapped nerve. Drop a comment below if you've ever been in a situation like this, where you felt like you were speaking a different language than your partner. I honestly need to know I'm not the only one who went through this. The blog grew. Fast. Within 6 months, I had thousands of regular readers. I started a private community forum. It became a place where men could share their stories without judgment, a digital brotherhood forged in betrayal. We talked about everything: how to handle the legal stuff, how to co-parent, how to deal with the loneliness, how to start dating again. But most importantly, we talked about how to rebuild your own sense of self-worth when the person who is supposed to be your biggest cheerleader becomes your biggest critic. My work at the marketing firm was still going well, but the Phoenix Protocol was my passion. It was my therapy. Every man I helped felt like a small victory against what had happened to me. After about a year, I took the biggest leap of my life. I quit my safe, high-paying corporate job. I cashed out a chunk of my savings and poured it all into turning the blog into a real business. A coaching business. I got certified. I developed a program. It was terrifying. I was betting on myself, on this community I had built. The first few months were lean. I ate a lot of ramen. There were moments when I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Maybe Amelia was right. Maybe I was just a boring, comfortable guy who was destined to fail on his own. But then, the clients started coming. First 1, then 5, then 20. Men from all over the country, all with variations of the same story. They were good men. Doctors, plumbers, teachers, soldiers. And they were lost. My coaching wasn't about bitterness or revenge. That was the key. It was about what Mark had told me. Don't let her hold the pen. It was about taking back control of your own story. We focused on health, on fitness, on career, on rediscovering old hobbies, on building a life that was so fulfilling that the betrayal became a footnote, not the headline. It was about turning pain into fuel. 2 years after I arrived in Austin, my life was unrecognizable. I was my own boss. I was in the best shape of my life. I had a network of friends, genuine friends, who respected and supported me. The Phoenix Protocol was a thriving business, helping hundreds of men. I was making more money than I ever had in my corporate job, but for the first time, the work felt meaningful. It was a purpose born from my deepest wound. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. The constant low hum of Amelia's betrayal had finally faded. It was a scar, not an open wound. I rarely thought about her. She was a character from a book I'd read a long time ago. Of course, that's when she came back. It happened on a Wednesday. I'd just finished a coaching call with a client in Australia, a guy whose wife had left him with a mountain of debt and a hollowed-out heart. We'd had a breakthrough session, one of those calls that leaves you buzzing with energy, a reminder of why I do what I do. I was making a cup of coffee in my office, a sleek, modern space in a downtown high-rise, a world away from the dusty garage I'd packed up 2 years prior, when my assistant buzzed me through the intercom.
Alex, there's a woman here to see you, an Amelia Thompson. She doesn't have an appointment.
My blood ran cold. The coffee mug slipped and hot liquid sloshed over my hand. I barely felt it. Amelia. Here. In Austin. In my office. It was like seeing a ghost. For 2 years, there had been nothing. No calls, no texts, no emails. After the lawyers were done, she had vanished from my life completely. I'd seen through mutual friends' tagged photos on Facebook that she was still with the man of her dreams, some chiseled fitness influencer who posted an insufferable number of gym selfies. My first instinct was to say no, to tell my assistant to send her away, but a different, colder part of me took over. A part that had been forged in the fire of the last 2 years. I wanted to see her. I needed to see her. "Send her in, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. I walked over to my desk, sat in my chair, a large leather affair that felt like a throne, and waited. The door opened, and there she was. She looked different. The vibrant, carefree woman from my memories was gone. She was thinner, and there were tired lines around her eyes that her makeup couldn't quite hide. She was wearing an expensive-looking dress, but it hung on her like it belonged to someone else. She clutched a designer handbag like a shield. She looked around my office, her eyes wide, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view of the city, the awards and testimonials I had framed on the wall. The look on her face was a mixture of awe and disbelief. This wasn't the life of the comfortable, boring man she had left. "Alex," she said, her voice a little shaky.
Wow, you've done well for yourself.
I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I just looked at her, letting the silence hang in the air. "Amelia, what are you doing here?" She took a hesitant step into the room.
I was in town for a conference, and I saw your feature in that business magazine, The Phoenix Protocol. I couldn't believe it was you.
She forced a laugh.
My boring Alex, a life coach guru.
The condescension was still there, a faint echo of the woman I used to know. But it was laced with something new. Uncertainty. "I help men who have been in difficult situations," I said, my tone flat. "What do you want?" That's when the dam broke. Her carefully constructed composure crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes.
I made a mistake, Alex. A terrible, terrible mistake.
Here it was. The speech I had once fantasized about hearing, kneeling in the wreckage of my old life. But now, hearing it, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just a strange, clinical detachment. She launched into the story. The dream man, the influencer, turned out to be a nightmare. He was controlling, narcissistic, and unfaithful. The passion and excitement she'd chased turned out to be a carousel of drama and anxiety. The man of her dreams was a beautiful mirage that hit a barren desert. He'd left her a few months ago for a younger model. The brunch brigade, her cheerleaders of self-interest, had scattered the moment her life wasn't Instagram perfect anymore. Jessica, she told me, was on her third soulmate in 2 years.
It was all a lie, she sobbed, sinking into one of the visitor chairs opposite my desk. They made me think that our life, our marriage, was holding me back, that you were holding me back. But it wasn't true. Our life was real. It was good. You were good. I was just too stupid and too influenced by the wrong people to see it.
She looked at me, her eyes pleading.
I see what you've built here. You're amazing, Alex. You always were. I threw it all away. I threw us away. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a second chance. We can start again, here, or we can go back home. Whatever you want.
I let her finish. I listened to every word. I watched the tears stream down her face. The old Alex would have been moved. The old Alex would have felt a pang of his old love, his old instinct to fix things, to make her feel better. But the old Alex was dead. He'd died on the floor of an empty house 2 years ago. The man sitting in this chair was someone else entirely. I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the polished surface of my desk. "A second chance?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You think this is about a second chance?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city that had become my home, the city where I had rebuilt myself from nothing. "Let me tell you what you did, Amelia. You didn't just leave me. You didn't just cheat. You fundamentally disrespected me as a human being. You took 8 years of my life, of my love, of my loyalty, and you treated it like garbage you were taking to the curb. You didn't give me the courtesy of a conversation. You didn't have the courage to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. You hit me with a wrecking ball and walked away, telling me to deal with it." I turned to face her. Her face was pale. "And I did," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I dealt with it. I crawled out of the hole you put me in. I took all the pain, all the humiliation, and I built this." I gestured around the office. "This isn't just a business, Amelia. This is my life. A life I built without you. A life that is better because you are not in it. Every man I help, every life I see turn around, is a testament to the fact that what you did was a gift. It was the most painful, brutal, liberating gift I have ever received. You set me free. You forced me to become the man I was always supposed to be, but was too comfortable to become. She was shaking her head, whispering,
No, Alex, please.
You don't want me, I said, my voice like steel. You want this. I pointed out the window again. You want the success. You want the man from the magazine. You don't want the man who would have done anything for you, the man you threw away. You see, the funny thing is the man you want now wouldn't want you. He learned his lesson. He knows his worth. I walked back to my desk, my steps echoing in the suddenly vast feeling room. I pressed the intercom button. Sarah, could you come in for a moment? Amelia looked utterly broken, a shattered reflection of the confident woman who had walked out on me. I felt a flicker of something, a ghost of pity, but I snuffed it out. This wasn't about cruelty. This was about consequences. This was the final page of the chapter she had started. I looked her dead in the eye, my face a mask of calm resolve. I think you should go, Amelia, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, not out of pity, but out of finality. There's really nothing more to say. And besides, I added, glancing at the clock on my wall, you need to leave. My wife will be here any minute. The shock on her face was absolute. It was a more profound, more complete devastation than anything her ex-lover or fickle friends could have ever inflicted. It was the sound of the last door in the universe slamming shut in her face. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, the words, my wife, hanging in the air between us like a guillotine. She didn't say another word. She just stood up, a broken automaton, and walked out of my office. My assistant, Sarah, who is, for the record, my brilliant, kind, and incredibly supportive fiancé, held the door for her, giving me a small, knowing smile. I watched Amelia go. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel hatred. I felt closure. The final clean snip of the last thread that connected me to that old life. Mark was right. She'd started the chapter, but I had written the end. And my new story, my real story, was just beginning.